This is the European stage list, starting off as the Dutch Super Smash Bros. Ultimate rule set a few years ago, being created in 2021, into eventually being adapted by pretty much all of Europe as the years went by, with essentially every European major using this rule set. With a lot of different countries adapting it as the main rule set, it eventually became the Unified European rule set. And a unified rule set is great! With so many tournaments using the same rule set, it just creates more consistency when picking and banning, and doesn't require you to look up what the rule set is for each specific tournament. With this in mind, it would be in everyone's best interest if the rest of the world adopted the same rule set, or perhaps that Europe instead adapted to a different rule set. But nope! Over 5 years later since the game's release, and there's still no universal rule set. Which is fine. It's kind of silly, but it doesn't matter that much. It just would be better for everyone if all tournaments, or at least every single major tournament, just used the same rule set, which is why I think they should all use this one. But why this one? Why not the Umebara SP10 rule set that has Smashville as a counterpick? For that, I'm gonna explain why I just really like this rule set and I think it's the best. For this, I want to look at the 3 big factors that differentiate it from other rule sets: 9 stages, characters first, and no counterpicks. The year is 2019. Ultimate is in its first year of release. People who have no idea how competitive Smash works, yet still feel the need to harshly state their opinion, are running rampant, and both players and tournaments are still experimenting with viable stages, to say the least. With over 100 unique stages present in the game and a newly added option to turn hazards on and off, it seemed like the amount of competitively viable stages would be far greater than ever before. And it was, and still is for the most, due in part to 2 stages that are now used in competitive Smash being added in via updates. I really wonder what the stage list now would have looked like had Small Battlefield and Hollow Bastion not been here. Maybe we would still be debating about this insignificant teleport quirk of Unova. But instead, we aren't, because ever since the last DLC update we have had 8 stages which are all used often. Final Destination, Battlefield, Small Battlefield, Town and City, Smashville, Hollow Bastion, Pokemon Stadium 2, and Kalos Pokemon League. However, over here we of course have a 9th stage in our rule set, Yoshi's Story. Now, there's people that don't think highly of the stage, and would definitely never even consider it as a good choice for a stage list, which always kind of blows my mind a little. Because it's probably the best stage against some characters that a lot of people hate, like Steve and Sonic. Of course, just adding Yoshi's Story to a rule set isn't an end-all be-all solution to Steve, especially when they can just ban it when picking stages. But that's still something small that's more likely to be in your favor. Of course, a stage being a good pick against a couple of characters isn't really a foolproof argument for it to be added to rule sets. But aside from that, I still really like this stage. On the surface, it kind of looks like another stage derived from Battlefield, because, you know, triangular platforms and such. But Yoshi's Story has multiple aspects that set it apart from being just that. In fact, there's a lot. First of all, there are walls, making it one of only 2 viable stages with walls. All of the blast zones are closer to the stage. Not only that, the stage itself is smaller as well. The platforms, however, are bigger and higher off the ground, even disregarding the low points of the slants. Speaking of, there are slants. And some players like to speak of slants as if they are the devil, but I don't think these are really that bad. I like them if anything. The only weird thing I could really see on the stage is this weird stage spike angle. But like, this stage does the same thing. And do people hesitate asking you to Gentlemen to Pokemon Stadium 2? No. But yeah, all of this changes a lot of aspects of the game when compared to Battlefield. Even something like raising the platforms a little higher can impact a lot of interactions. So if you don't like Steve, if you don't like Sonic, and you are playing on a rule set without Yoshi's Story, tell your tournament organizer or whatever to add this stage. Back in the old days of Super Smash Bros. 4 and every other game prior to that, it was always character first, stage second. But that all changed when that wasn't the case anymore. Ultimate changed that to stage first, character second, with the reason being explicitly stated in the first Smash Direct, being implemented so that you can now pick a character suited for the stage. Which is cool, I guess. And competitive play went along with that, with rule sets being changed to stage first, character second, because it's just easier to do so instead of contradicting with the game itself. But in my opinion, it just boils down to 2 big things. not knowing your opponent's character, and counterpicking. Just simply put, if you're playing against somebody you don't know, you're essentially just picking a stage with a blindfold on. And before you know it, you're playing against Kazuya on Final Destination. Then there's counterpicking. You won game 1, you banned probably the same stages as before the first game. However, your opponent has a secondary you didn't know about, and before you know it,
Here comes the money.
For some people, of course, that isn't an issue. The argument being that you should be rewarded for being able to play a second character at a high level, which I can understand. However, the option of having that choice and being able to cover matchups that your main might particularly not do well in is already enough of a reward in my opinion. And you shouldn't necessarily need a stage that lopsided for you to play that character. Aside from that though, there's also the fact that stage first is just more convenient, as that's just the order the game has it in. And yeah, that's just true. But I don't think that's enough to warrant having stage first, so I think character first is just strictly better. This rule set having 0 counterpick stages with all 9 being a starter is quite unorthodox. Even with a 9 stage rule set, you would normally at least expect Yoshis and either Town or Kalos as counterpicks. 1 extra big stage and 1 smaller stage. But what's the thought process behind the stage being a counterpick stage anyway? Obviously, looking at the name, it would imply those stages would be picked to counter your opponent's character. But looking at early rule sets, the mindset behind it seemed more in tone with weird fucking stage, counterpick. Obviously this really didn't hold up, which is why a lot of those stages quickly faded away from rule sets along with the introduction of Small Battlefield and eventually Hollow Bastion, just giving us much better options. But one thing people also started to realize about stages is, Final Destination is a really polarizing stage. The complete absence of platforms and just a white blank slate really gives some characters a huge advantage. The stage that is so ingrained in rule sets as being a starter stage was getting looked at differently, and some rule sets even changed Final Destination to a counterpick. The thing is, with this line of thinking, you could really argue that every stage that has a chance of being used in a competitive environment is a counterpick stage. Everyone knows how good Battlefield is for ladder combos. Donkey Kong on PS2, insanely early kill confirms. Zelda's Phantom Knight covers essentially the entirety of Smashville, and there's a good reason why Roy is infamous on Town and City. Some characters can just take crazy advantage of certain platforms, width of the stage, or the size of blast zones. And when every stage is a counterpick, none of them are. So, that's why in my opinion this is the best rule set for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I think a unified stage list for all major tournaments would be cool to see. Don't really have many other things to say than like and subscribe. Goodbye.